This began with a gesture nobody understood. A quiet language, seen but unheard. Stay, and you'll learn how one small sign can topple an empire, and why someone worked so hard to bury the hands that made it, the chandelier. Over Aurora carved light into shards. Silver hummed. Crystal breathed. Wealth arranged itself into shadows that never asked permission to exist. Lina Cruz stood at the service station and pretended to be ordinary. She adjusted. A black apron that did not belong to her. She checked the wine list she could recite backward. She counted the steps. From kitchen to table 12, a path worn into muscle memory. Nobody at Aurora knew why she walked like a stagehand, not a star. Nobody asked why her eyes tracked exits before faces. That was the point. Invisible people leave no ripples when they pass. Table 12, the captain murmured. Margot. No spill. Lina nodded and lifted the bottle. Her hands were steady. They were always steady, even when her heart wasn't. Elias Verne occupied the head chair at 12, the way weather occupies a sky. Midnight suit. Gray eyes that measured more than they admired. The stories said he could turn outcomes by refusing to look surprised. Beside him sat Alma Verne, silver hair gathered with a pearl pin. She watched the room with a softness that didn't miss much. Her hearing aids glimmered, and then vanished beneath a sweep of hair. The city called her deaf. The city had no idea how loudly silence speaks when it's taught. Lina approached with Margot tilted just so. Elias barely glanced up. But Alma did. The older woman lifted a hand, fingers shaping an invisible thread. A small motion. A question asked without sound. Something unlatched in Lina's posture. She set the bottle down. Her fingers answered in a language the dining room had no words for. Good evening. You have beautiful taste. Would you like to speak with the chef about the salmon? Alma's face brightened. Her reply was quick, detailed. Alive with Paris and memory and a sauce that almost, but not quite, matched the summer of 1982. Around them, cutlery paused midair. Conversation thinned. People who did not look at. Waitstaff looked at hands instead. Elias lifted his eyes and studied the exchange. He didn't interrupt. He watched the room bend a little toward the space between two women who were not supposed to find each other here. Lina translated for no one and for the entire room at once. She couldn't help. It, meaning longs to be seen. Alma thanked her, then asked a question with a tilt of chin. Where did you learn? Lina's answer moved slower. A university she no longer named. A life that didn't fit inside an apron, hands that remembered. Equations, even when the woman attached to them tried not to. Elias's voice arrived like a blade sheathed in velvet. What university? Lina's eyes flicked to him, then away. The kind that teaches you how to listen. He almost smiled. Almost. The captain reappeared with a menu correction that did not require Lina's attention. She stepped back as protocol demanded. But Alma raised a hand again. One last question. One last thread. Do you ever speak for yourself? Lina's answer was a soft shake of the head. Tonight isn't about me. But the room had already decided otherwise. It had heard the sound of something true, and truth has an echo even inside velvet. Elias stood when his phone buzzed, the gesture minimal, the effect maximal. He spoke into the receiver like a man issuing weather. When he returned, he didn't sit. Thank you, he told Lina, for seeing my mother. I didn't do anything special, she said. That's the tragedy of it, he replied. At another table, a tech founder whispered, She signs. At the bar, someone said, She signs like a native. At the kitchen pass, the sous chef muttered, Who is she? Lina collected plates that didn't need collecting. She poured water into glasses already full. Her chest felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with the room. Once, the right conversation had opened every door for her. Then a single. Accusation had closed them all. She reset the station. She wiped a glass that did not require wiping. She counted breaths again. Alma touched her wrist. gently as Lina refilled her water. Thank you. Most. People pretend louder when they meet. Silence. Lina smiled. Silence saved my life once. She signed, It's only fair I pay rent, Elias. Watched that line land. He watched the way Lina's smile did not reach her eyes. He watched the captain pretend not to notice any of it. From somewhere deep inside the bones of Aurora, the pianist shifted to a minor key. The dining room leaned closer to its own reflection. When Lina stepped away, Alma lifted her napkin and placed it carefully across her plate, as if blessing the space where truth had just stood. Elias raised a second glass he had not ordered. To people who listen. He didn't say to whom. He didn't have to. After the first wave of whispers, the room pretended to forget. It returned to desserts and deals, to birthdays and private wars. But a mark had been made. Invisible people rarely remain invisible after they teach a room what it's missing. At closing, Lina logged inventory with hands that knew other ledgers. She noted the Margot depletion curves and the absurd precision of Table 12's palette. She signed out. On the sidewalk, the city wore rain like jewelry. She pulled her coat tight and walked toward the subway. The night had been nothing and everything at once. A black car idled at the curb. The window lowered an inch. Ms. Cruz, a voice said. Not a question, an invitation. That sounded like a file being opened. She kept walking, but the voice followed as a thought follows a heartbeat. Invisible people leave no ripples, unless they choose to. Somebody at Aurora had seen more than hands tonight, and somewhere across town, a locked drawer waited for a key Lina swore she no longer carried. The city blinked. The rain stitched light into the dark, and a secret that had stayed under glass began. Quietly, to breathe. Aurora slept with its eyes open. By morning, the dining room would be polished back to innocence. By noon, the rumor would have a name. Lina's train groaned into motion, a tired animal shouldering steel. She stood near the door and pretended the window was a future. Queens unspooled in reflections, bruised billboards, laundromats, faces that knew the price of things. Her phone buzzed once. Private number? She let it die. Invisible people owe no explanations. On the third stop, a woman offered Lina her seat. Lina declined with a smile that belonged to safer years. Back then, sharing space had been easy. Back then, she had believed that talent was armor. At street level, her apartment greeted her with the soft complaint of old wood. She set keys down, counted habitually to 5, and opened the cupboard above the fridge. Inside, wrapped in a dish towel, sat a notebook that didn't exist. She touched it but didn't open it. Not tonight. Not unless the dark pressed too close. Sleep came in pieces. At 4, a siren braided itself into a dream where hands tried to speak underwater. At 6, she woke to rain stitching the window again. At 7, Aurora texted the lineup for the night and a reminder about a private buyout at 8. At 8:30, a message appeared from an unknown contact. Thank you for last night. She loved Paris in the 80s. Lina deleted it and stared at the clean space the words had occupied. Then she put the phone face down and went to make coffee she didn't want. By late afternoon, Aurora had been transformed for the buyout. No regulars. No walk-ins, just a long ribbon of tables, a pale jungle of flowers, and 3 places set at the head like a verdict. The captain briefed the staff in a tone that mixed reverence and fear. Mr. Verne. 2 guests. No media. No mistakes. Lina kept her hands behind her back and her eyes on the floor. Invisibility, once learned, is a hymn you can't stop humming. At 7:56, the car arrived. Elias stepped out first. Shadow cut to measure. A woman emerged behind him, not Alma. This one wore influence like a scent. Journalist, Lina guessed, or something quieter. They entered, and Aurora did what it always does. It absorbed the story and served it back as theater. Lina approached with a water tray. The woman's voice carried the soft authority of someone who had never needed to raise. I've wanted to meet you for years, Mr. Verne. Off the record, if you prefer. Everything is a record, he said. Some ledgers just take longer to balance. The woman's smile suggested she understood the weight of that. Then let's start with last night. Your mother seemed happy. I introduced her to someone who speaks in the language she deserves. Lina set water down without spilling a drop. She did not look at either of them. Her hands felt too loud. The journalist studied the crystal for a beat too long. Then she lifted her gaze to Lina. Would you ask the chef about the herb blend on the salmon? I hear it changes with the season. Lina nodded. In the kitchen, the air was butter and fire. The chef eyed her. Is he testing us already? The city tests us, she said. We just happened to be awake. On the way back, she passed the bar where a suited man she didn't recognize had planted himself like a signature. He wasn't drinking. He was measuring exits, security, maybe, or an accountant for a life that did not allow mistakes. The journalist was laughing when Lina returned with the answer about herbs. It was a real laugh. Unguarded, the kind adults forget how to make. Thank you, she said, taking the explanation like a gift. Then lightly, almost carelessly, where did you study? Lina yielded to the oldest tactic in the book. Answer with a question. Would you like still or sparkling? Still will do. The woman's eyes were kind and relentless. Curiosity is a profession, so is defense. Elias spared Lina and rescued the moment with a story about rain and Bordeaux and a chef in Nice who swore time is theft if you... Don't ask first. Lina placed the glasses, stepped back, and let herself breathe. She had almost reached the service station when the suited man spoke without looking at her. Miss Cruz. Her spine cooled. She turned. He offered a single envelope. No logo, no return. Address, just wait. She took it because refusing would admit fear. Inside the walk-in, between crates of fennel and mint, she slid the letter free. The paper smelled faintly of smoke and rain. The message was 6 words long. He is not the only one. No signature. No instructions. A sentence shaped like a door. She folded it back into the envelope and put both into the pocket stitched under her apron's hem. Her pulse settled by degrees. Back on the floor, the journalist had leaned in. How do you decide who deserves your time? Elias answered before the question reached him fully. By how they treat silence. The journalist wrote something she didn't need to write to remember. Lina filled the glasses again. Between courses, Alma Verne arrived late, escorted by a woman who signed clumsily but with heart. Lina's chest loosened at the sight. Some truths repeat to prove they're real. Alma took Elias's hand, squeezed, and then beckoned Lina without ceremony. You look tired. She signed, maternal and exact. Are you safe? The second question almost made Lina laugh. Safety is a place you invent for other people and live outside yourself. I'm fine, she signed. Tonight is beautiful. Alma's eyes said she knew a half-truth when she saw one. She touched Lina's knuckles anyway, a benediction disguised as etiquette. When dessert came, Elias stood. Thank you for joining me, he told the journalist. Off the record or on, there are things that deserve sunlight. She rose with him. So bring them to the window. He glanced at Lina then, not asking, not telling. A decision had been made in a room neither of them had visited. By the time coats were summoned and goodnight said, the suited man had vanished from the bar. The envelope still weighed against Lina's ribs like a thought she hadn't finished having. On the sidewalk, Alma paused, turned back, and signed a single sentence toward the front window, where Lina stood behind millefeuille and reconciliation. Don't hide from the storm. It knows your name anyway. Lina's fingers answered before she could stop. Then don't call it a storm. Call it weather. Weather passes. The car pulled away. The glass returned her own face to her. Invisible, she told herself. Invisible and fine, but the letter's 6 words kept breathing. He is not the only one. There. Our cities under cities dot rooms inside. Rooms. Stories that trade names like currency until the only thing left is the debt. Tonight had been elegance at the surface, calm at the edge. Beneath it, something old had turned over and faced the light. If you've ever felt a room shift because truth entered quietly, you know this weight. Stay with it. We're just beginning. The morning after the Vern dinner began like any other, gray, quiet, unassuming. Yet the air felt weighted, as if the city itself had heard a secret and was deciding what to do with it. Lina Cruz awoke before dawn, unable to shake the echo of 6 words that had followed her home. He is not the only one. They floated between dream and memory, whispering through the hiss of the kettle, through the cracked paint of her queen's apartment. She told herself it was a prank, someone at Aurora playing games, but the paper had smelled of smoke and rain, and that scent did not belong to jokes. She made coffee that tasted like penance and sat by the window. Across the street, a man in a long coat smoked beneath the awning of a closed florist. He wasn't looking up, but she recognized the stillness of watchers, the kind who record rather than see. She closed the blinds, heart steady, breath slower than it should be. Invisible people, she reminded herself, are safest when they stay that way. The knock came at 7:12, 2 short raps, 1 long pause, a 3rd softer tap. The rhythm of professionals. Lina froze. The city had rules. Delivery knocks sounded different from inquiries. "Miss Cruz?" a voice called. Male, mid-30s, neutral tone. "Message from Mr. Vern." She hesitated, then opened the door halfway. A man in a charcoal suit stood in the hall, rain still clinging to his shoulders. He handed her a sealed envelope identical to the one from last night. Plain, heavy, deliberate. She waited until his footsteps faded before tearing it open. "I believe we need to talk. Same place, 3 p.m. Bring honesty." No signature, but the phrasing was pure Elias Vern. Formal restraint balanced on the edge of command. Lina leaned back against the door and exhaled. Honesty. The word felt foreign now, like a language she used to speak but had forgotten how to conjugate. By noon, Aurora's kitchen was alive again. Steam, fire, repetition. She moved through it like a ghost, clocking in for her haunting. The captain gave orders. The staff obeyed. No one mentioned the buyout or the whispers that followed. "Only the dishwasher dared to joke. Table 12 misses you already?" he said. She smiled without meaning it. "Then tell it to send flowers." At 2:30, she slipped out the back door, traded her uniform for a gray coat, and walked toward Central Park. Rain had stopped, but the streets were slick with reflections. Every puddle was a mirror that refused to hold her image still. Elias waited by the fountain near the library, an umbrella tilted against the wind. He looked like a man rehearsing solitude. "You came," he said. "You asked. Not everyone does." They stood in silence, long enough for pigeons to circle and resettle. "I shouldn't have messaged you," he began. "But last night, my mother couldn't stop talking about you. She said you spoke in the way people listen." Lina studied him. "That's poetic for a businessman." "Poetry and math aren't opposites," he said. "They're both languages for truth." She almost laughed. "Truth gets people killed." He didn't flinch. "So does the lack of it." A gust tore through the trees. Somewhere, a violinist tried to make music out of the wind. Elias looked down at his gloved hands. "When you spoke to my mother, you used academic syntax, structured, precise. You've studied linguistics formally." "That's a guess. That's an observation." "And what does your observation buy you, Mr. Verna?" "Perspective," he said. "And the sense that you are not who you pretend to be." Lina turned to leave. "Pretending is survival." "Then survive differently," he said softly. "Let me help." The words hung between them, heavier than invitation, lighter than confession. "Help?" she echoed. "You don't even know my name." "I know enough," he said. "You read financial ledgers like novels. You understood my mother's Parisian dialect, not the Americanized version taught in classes. And when the journalist mentioned universities, you looked terrified. not ignorant. Her pulse betrayed her before her mouth could deny it. Elias continued, quieter now. I checked this morning. There's no record of a Lina Cruz at any language school in the state. But there was once a Liana Carter, Columbia University, Masters in Linguistic Computation. She disappeared 2 years ago. The world narrowed. Sound dulled. The fountain behind them became a low heartbeat. You did more than check, she said. You investigated. I investigate everyone who crosses my path, he replied. But with you it felt less like due diligence, and more like gravity. Lina's laugh was small and bitter. Gravity destroys as much as it attracts. Only if you fight it. She met his eyes then, gray meeting the storm, and saw something she didn't expect. Curiosity tempered by respect. Not pity, not greed. A willingness to see her without claiming her. Tell me what you're running from, he said. From people who think curiosity is kindness. Then tell me what you're running toward. Silence, she answered. And maybe peace if it exists. Elias closed the umbrella, rain or no rain. Peace doesn't exist without justice. Lina smiled faintly. And justice doesn't exist for people like me. He studied her face. Maybe it does, if someone decides to rewrite the rules. The violin stopped. The park exhaled. Somewhere, thunder rolled a promise only the brave could keep. Lina turned away. I can't be part of whatever game you think this is. No game, he said. But if you ever change your mind, check tomorrow's business section. You might recognize a name. He walked off before she could ask what he meant. The fountain resumed its steady rhythm, water returning to pattern. Lina stayed a moment longer, fingers tracing invisible words into the wet marble. The rain had started again, soft and deliberate. Invisible people, she thought, are safest unseen. But sometimes the spotlight finds you anyway, and when it does, you'd better know which truths are worth speaking aloud. By dawn, the papers had done what papers always do, tell half a truth and let the silence fill the rest. Verne Group suspends strategic merger. The headline was clean, bloodless, almost polite. Below it, 2 sentences hinted at turbulence in the city's most immaculate empire. Lina read the article twice without breathing properly. She hadn't spoken to Elias since the park. She hadn't planned to. Yet his warning now looked like prophecy printed in black ink. At Aurora, the captain barked orders with the urgency of men who fear headlines more than hunger. If anyone asks, the Verns are out of town, he said. We serve, we smile, we forget. The word was easy for men who'd never been the thing they wanted erased. By noon, Lina was slicing lemons in the prep room when Amy, one of the junior servers, slipped in. You made the news? Amy whispered. Lina didn't look up. Everyone makes the news eventually. No, Amy insisted. They're talking about that dinner. About you. She handed her phone over. The screen showed a gossip feed. Grainy photo, caption bold. Mystery waitress captures billionaire's attention. Lina almost laughed. The world never saw what mattered. It saw posture, not purpose. She wiped her hands, gave the phone back. Delete it, Amy hesitated. You're not scared? Of what? Of being noticed. Lina glanced at the doorway. Noticed is fine. Remembered is dangerous. The afternoon dragged, a blur of orders and noise. At 5, the captain pulled her aside. Mr. Verne's assistant called, he said. Private dinner tonight, table 7. You're requested personally. Her first instinct was refusal. Her second was curiosity. Her third, resignation. Running from gravity never worked for long. By 8, Aurora was half empty, the kind of quiet reserved for deals that rewrite maps. Elias sat alone at 7, jacket off, sleeves rolled, expression unreadable. When she approached, he didn't greet her. He simply said, sit. She did. You read the paper? He said. Yes. You think I leaked it? I think you live in a world where leaks have purpose. A flicker, amusement, respect, fatigue, crossed his face. Fair. He pushed a folder toward her. Inside were copies of old Helios documents, balance sheets, internal memos, her signature forged across 3 of them. The room tilted. Where did you get these? From someone who thought they could sell them to me. Who? He didn't answer. Instead, you were right about Damien Cross. Her heart stopped for half a beat. The name was a wound stitched poorly. He's still working? He's trying to buy Helios's remnants through shell companies. He needed my approval for the merger. Lina's pulse quickened. So you stopped it? I paused it, Elias corrected. Stopping it requires proof. Proof you have. She laughed once, bitter and small. I have nothing but nightmares. Then let's turn them into evidence. She looked at him, trying to read the motive behind the calm. Why help me? Because corruption is bad for profit, he said, deadpan. Then, softer. And because some things bother my mother. Your mother? She said silence is a language cowards learn too well. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them hummed with shared ghosts. Finally, Elias leaned forward. I need everything you remember. Names, dates, numbers. We'll rebuild the timeline. Lina hesitated. Memory was a minefield. Each fact had a scar attached. You think this will bring justice? She asked. I think truth, once visible, has a way of finding its own court. She nodded slowly. Then you'd better prepare for a long trial, they began. For hours, they sifted through her recollections. The night Damien altered the ledgers, the emails that vanished, the security footage replaced by static. Elias typed as she spoke, precision cutting through fatigue. At one point, he looked up. Why didn't you fight back? I did, she said. But the moment you're called a liar in a room full of men with titles, your truth becomes a whisper. And whispers die in marble halls, he said nothing. He didn't need to. The tapping of his keyboard was answer enough. By midnight, the folder had grown thick with notes. Lina rubbed her temples. If you print this, you'll have enemies. I already do, he said. Now they'll have names. When she rose to leave, he stopped her with a question that sounded less like curiosity, more like a test. What do you want out of this, Lina? She paused. I want my name back. And I want him to remember it. He nodded. Then that's what we'll take from him first. Outside, the rain had returned, inevitable, cleansing, quiet. She walked past the windows of Aurora, their reflections trembling like memories. Across the street, a black sedan idled. Same model as before, same hum of patience. Lina turned away, pretending not to notice. But her reflection in the glass whispered something else entirely. He is not the only one. She wrapped her coat tighter and stepped into the dark, unaware that someone inside the car had just taken her picture. Invisible people leave no ripples, she reminded herself. But this time, the water was already moving. The photograph appeared the next morning, an image no one should have taken, printed without a name. Lina found it tucked beneath her apartment door, folded once, wrapped in a plain envelope. The picture showed her leaving Aurora, rain bending light around her silhouette. Across the bottom edge, written in ink the color of ash, were 5 words. He watches who you trust. She stared at it for a long time, then turned it over. Nothing. No sender, no mark, not even a printer's bleed. Only the faint smell of toner and something older, metallic, fear maybe. She boiled water just to have noise. The kettle hissed, the pipes groaned, the city exhaled its cold breath through the window gaps. New York had a way of listening without ever admitting it was listening. At 8:30, a text arrived. Unknown number. Meet me where truth was lost. 10 a.m. Come alone. No signature, but the phrasing wasn't Elias's. Too cryptic. Too sharp. She checked the street below. Nothing unusual. The florist across the road was open again, petals bright as wounds. The man in the long coat was gone. She almost deleted the message. Almost. But the words truth was lost landed too precisely. Only one place fit that description. The Helios Tower, 37 floors of glass where her career and her name had died 2 years ago. She told herself she wouldn't go. Then she found herself on the subway, coat collar high, the city flickering past like frames of an interrogation. By the time she reached Midtown, the tower's mirrored facade had already begun to reflect storm clouds. Security had changed since she'd last walked those halls. She used to be waved through by name. Now a guard asked for ID she no longer carried. "Visitor pass," he said, sliding a plastic badge across the counter. His eyes didn't linger. To him, she was nobody, and that anonymity felt almost holy. The elevator sighed upward. Numbers blinked like heartbeat monitors. On floor 32, the doors opened to a corridor lined with new artwork and the faint scent of fresh paint trying to hide old ghosts. At the far end stood a man she hadn't expected, Marcus Dell, her former analyst, the only one who hadn't testified against her. His hair was shorter now, his posture smaller. "Lina?" he said softly, using the name she'd buried. "Don't," she whispered. "Not here." He nodded, glancing toward the security camera at the ceiling corner. "They still record everything." "Then why call me?" He held up a flash drive, thin and trembling in his fingers. "Because not everything was deleted. I made copies, ledger archives, internal memos the night before it all burned." Her throat tightened. "You kept this for 2 years?" "I kept it for when you came back." "Why would I come back?" "Because guilt travels in circles," he said, "and someone's been asking about you." "Not Verne. Someone else." She took the drive, feeling its weight, its quiet promise. "Damien!" Marcus flinched at the name. "He's on the 37th floor now. Executive suite. Different title, same habits." Lina's pulse slowed to a dangerous calm. "Then he doesn't know I'm here." "Not yet," Marcus said. "But if that message reached you, he will soon." They stood in the echo of old air conditioning. Once this floor had been the data department. Now it was marketing, bright and sterile, a graveyard disguised as promotion. "You need to go," Marcus said. "Before someone sees—" She pocketed the drive. "What about you?" He smiled without humor. "I stopped being useful the day you left. This place only feeds on the living." As she turned toward the elevator, he added quietly, "Be careful who offers you justice. Sometimes they just want your confession." The doors slid shut between them. Her reflection fractured across the glass, one version of her looking forward, another looking back. Outside, the storm finally broke. Rain hit the street like static. She walked fast, coat hood up, heart an orderly drum. The flash drive pressed against her palm. A relic, a weapon, both. Halfway to the subway, she saw him, Damien Cross, unchanged in the way only the corrupt manage to be. Smooth, handsome, immaculate. He was exiting a car, laughing with someone on a phone call. He hadn't seen her yet. Lina froze under an awning. The world contracted into that single intersection. Her heartbeat, his smile, the weight of 2 stolen years. He turned. Their eyes met, recognition flickered. Shock followed. Then a smile, slow and reptilian. He said something she couldn't hear over the rain, but read perfectly from his lips. "You shouldn't have come back." She turned and walked away before her legs betrayed her. The city swallowed her whole again, sirens smearing the distance between what was past and what was next. Back in her apartment, she locked the door, drew the curtains, and inserted the flash drive into her old laptop. The screen came alive in a burst of folders labeled Archive 1, Ledger, Cross, Project Mercury. She opened one at random. Numbers, dates, bank transfers. Each one matching an account from the vendors in the market district. The same victims Torres had targeted in another story, another city. A pattern that didn't belong to chance. The cursor blinked like a pulse. She realized the trail didn't end with Helios. It connected companies, names, even police departments, and Verne Group sat squarely in the center. Her breath caught. Elias had said he wanted justice, but maybe justice wasn't the only thing he wanted. She stared at the rain-slick window. The reflection staring back no longer looked like a waitress or a victim. It looked like someone standing at the edge of a revelation too large for one life to contain. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline like a verdict. She whispered to no one, "You wanted the truth, Elias. Let's see if you can afford it. The city doesn't sleep. It rearranges its lies." By morning, Helios Tower shimmered again, as if no ghosts had walked its corridors. But ghosts, Lina knew, were creatures of daylight too. They just changed clothes. She spent the early hours decoding the files Marcus had given her. Columns of numbers unfolded like riddles, each one a quiet crime in progress. Helios hadn't been a single betrayal. It was a network, banks, shell accounts, private security firms, all funneling into a foundation that didn't exist. The name appeared on every fourth page. Project Mercury. No description. No owners. Just a logo, 2 wings and a scale etched like irony. Lina leaned back, eyes burning from the screen. She remembered a meeting 2 years ago when Damien had used the same symbol on a confidential proposal. He'd called it a humanitarian initiative. Back then, she'd believed him. Back then, she'd still believed in people. Now, the folder whispered a different story, one that smelled of laundered millions and blood polished off marble floors. At 9, her phone buzzed. The message came from Elias. You found something. Meet me at 4 p.m. Don't bring devices. She stared at it for a long time. How did he know? Had he been tracking her since last night, or was someone feeding him updates? Trust had become an endangered species. Still, she went. Curiosity wasn't her weakness. It was her curse. The meeting place was unexpected. An art gallery on the Lower East Side, the kind where silence costs more than conversation. Elias stood near a painting of a woman half faded into fog. He turned as she approached, and the air between them felt measured, deliberate. You shouldn't have gone to Helios, he said before she spoke. I didn't tell you I did. He exhaled. You didn't need to. Because you're watching me? Because Damien called me this morning, he replied. He asked if I knew you were alive. Lina's stomach tightened. And what did you say? I said no. For your sake, I'll keep saying it. She looked at him, searching for motive beneath the calm. Why help me if it puts you in his crosshairs? Elias studied the painting again. Because sometimes, to clean a system, you have to burn the blueprint. And Damien's blueprint has infected mine. She crossed her arms. You think Project Mercury connects us? I don't think. I know. He slid a thin folder across the bench between them. Inside were financial flow charts matching the ones from her flash drive. Only his copies bore the Verna Group logo. Half of my company's philanthropic funds were routed through that project, he said. It was supposed to build educational centers overseas. Instead, the money disappeared into ghost contractors. And you didn't notice? I noticed too late. She studied the data. These accounts, some linked directly to police pension funds. Public money. Yes, Elias said. And one of those departments belongs to the city where you used to live. Lina froze. The Market District, he nodded. Different faces, same system, a loop. Your Helios data connects to my corporate ledgers, which connect to a municipal slush fund. Someone built an empire out of silence. Her voice lowered. And now you want to expose them. I want to know how deep it goes. Lina hesitated, then said quietly, Marcus gave me the original drives. He risked his job. Elias's expression darkened. Then Marcus won't have a job much longer. Damien doesn't forgive treason. He already knows, she said. He saw me. Elias turned sharply. When? Yesterday. Outside Helios. The silence that followed felt surgical. Then we have hours, not days, he said. Once Damien confirms you're real, he'll erase the evidence the same way he erased your reputation. She smiled grimly. He can try. Elias leaned closer. Listen to me. If he finds out I'm helping you, Verna Group becomes collateral damage. My board, my investors, they'll bury the story and me with it. Then why not walk away? She asked. You owe me nothing. He met her eyes. Because I do. 2 years ago, when Helios fell, my firm bought its assets for pennies. I told myself it was business. Now I know it was complicity. Lina's pulse slowed. So this is atonement. Call it arithmetic, he said. Something has to balance. A security guard coughed politely, reminding them that silence here was paid by the minute. Elias rose. I'll contact you when I have something concrete. Until then, trust no one. He turned to leave but paused at the door. And Lina, burn the flash drive after you back it up. There are people who'd kill just to know which files you opened. When he was gone, she stood before the painting, the woman fading into fog. From certain angles, the face almost looked like hers. Outside, the street was loud, wet, indifferent. She blended into it easily, another shadow moving between reflections. But beneath the calm, her mind spun with arithmetic of its own. Every truth owed a debt, and every debt demanded payment. Back in her apartment, she hid the flash drive inside the hollow of an old dictionary. Then she opened her laptop and began compiling notes. Each connection drew a new line. Helios, Verne Group, Project Mercury, municipal funds. The web grew until it filled the screen like a living thing. And there, at the intersection of every path, one name appeared again, Damien Cross. She stared at it until her vision blurred. The man had stolen her work, her future, her peace. Now he was stealing cities. Thunder rumbled outside, rolling toward Manhattan like judgment. Lina closed the laptop and whispered to the dark, "If he built an empire out of silence, I'll tear it down with noise." The window caught a flash of lightning. For a heartbeat, the reflection of her face and the city's skyline merged into one image, fragile, defiant, awake. Justice, she realized, was no longer a concept. It was a countdown. They say power smells like money. Lina learned it smelled like laundry detergent and fresh paper. Ordinary, clean, then suddenly wrong. The next morning felt like an interrogation in sunlight. News vans passed with polite faces. The city moved as if nothing had shifted. But Lina felt the ground rearrange beneath her feet. She met Marcus at a cafe that hadn't changed in 2 years, a place whose chairs remembered names and forgave debts. He arrived with haggard eyes and a cardboard cup, like a man who'd chosen the wrong side of courage and now lived with the bill. He slid into the booth opposite her and set a thin envelope on the table without speaking. "You made a list," she said. "I made copies," Marcus corrected, "and I left breadcrumbs where I thought someone might follow. People forget the little things. A deleted file leaves return addresses. A ghost company still pays for parking. I found patterns you can use." She opened the envelope. Inside, photocopies of invoices, a list of shell entities tied to Project Mercury, and one name repeated in the margins, an accountant in Jersey with a gambling habit and a bad habit of forgetting discretion. Marcus watched her face like a man waiting for thunder. "Why did you risk this?" Lina asked. "Because some people asked for truth at a time when nobody wanted the paperwork to be remembered," he said. "And because you left, you didn't deserve to be erased." Her fingers tightened on the paper. Memory, she knew, was a fragile instrument. Someone's recollection could be discredited by a page stamped with authority. Today she had pages again. "Elias secured a meeting with a lawyer," Marcus added, a contact through his mother. "He wants a sealed review before the board sees anything. That'll give us time if we act fast." Lina thought of Damien's smile under rain and the way he'd said she shouldn't have come back. Time felt smaller when he was near. "How fast?" "Hours," Marcus said. "We'll need witnesses and corroboration. We'll need names connected to transactions, dates, and, this is important, physical proof of the transfers," she inhaled. "And if we can't get that? Then we expose patterns publicly," he said. "We let the city decide." Outside, a delivery truck rattled, indifferent. The city had ways of swallowing noise and spitting out headlines. But headlines lived for a day. Corporate compliance lived longer. Marcus leaned forward, lowering his voice. "There's another problem. A file in the Helios archive shows a back channel. Communications routed through a private security firm. They provided logistics, personnel, and a surprising number of convenient, lost records. It looks like a cleanup operation." Lina's skin prickled. "You mean they burned files and called it security?" He nodded. "And some of those security people are local. That explains the van outside your apartment." He tapped the table where the photo lay folded like a small accusation. "They guard more than property. They guard reputations. What do they want?" she asked. "Silence," Marcus said, "and the right price for forgetting." She thought of the market vendors she had defended in another life, of the small hands that counted cash, and the way fear could be levied like tax. Project Mercury wasn't about charity. It was about extraction, the slow siphoning of public trust. "Do you have anyone on the inside?" she asked. "Not many," Marcus admitted. "One, a junior records clerk in compliance who hates the smell of power the way I hate it. She's nervous but willing to copy files at midnight. It's risky. She's at her mother's tonight. He paused. She asks only one thing, that we protect her identity. Lina folded the photocopies, smoothing them like pages of a fragile treaty. We protect her, she said. No names on the records, no paths back to her apartment. We use secure drop points. He exhaled, a small, grateful sound. We need you to go on record with memory, too. I can't subpoena courage. I can only introduce it to a court. The word court felt cold and immediate. Memory in front of a judge became evidence or a tragedy depending on a single signature. Lina thought of the first time Damien had sat across from her and smiled, the slow erosion of trust disguised as mentorship. She had been young then, brave in the narrowness of the world she believed in. Do you think I can speak without shattering? She asked. You already did, he said. You spoke to that woman at Aurora. You made a billionaire listen. This is just louder. His faith sat like an ember against her ribs. She wasn't sure if she wanted to shelter it or fan it into conflagration. They planned the night like conspirators. Drop points, a list of witnesses, a backup plan if things went sideways. Marcus drew a map on a napkin with corners labeled Compliance Clerk, Midnight Copy, Vendor Contact, Fixed Location Testimony, City Council Cleaner Rumor Verification. Each checkpoint felt like a stitch in a garment that might either cover them or choke them. As they left, Marcus paused. One more thing, he said. There's chatter that Damien's legal team is aggressive. He hires fixer crews. If any attempt to discredit you starts publicly, we pivot to the board. Make the fight visible. For him? Lina asked. For everyone, Marcus corrected. For the vendors, for the clerk, for the people who believed evidence was expensive rather than priceless. He folded the napkin and tucked it into his coat like a talisman. They parted at the corner where city noise licked the pavement. Lina walked toward the subway with the weight of photocopies in her bag and a new rhythm in her step. It wasn't the confident stride of a person who had power. It was the careful step of someone learning to keep pace with their own audacity. The day moved through her like someone turning pages. By dusk, she was in contact with the compliance clerk, a young woman named Rosa who smelled faintly of laundry soap and courage. Rosa's hands trembled when she left the thumb drive at the drop point, but the drive clicked into Lina's palm with satisfying finality. Later, Marcus sent a single message. If this goes wrong, remember the truth has a loud echo when it hits marble. Lina sat on a bench and watched the city light. Above, the sky clarified into something honest. Few stars, some thin mercy. She felt fear alongside a clearer thing, the slow building of a noise that could not be ignored. Someone had stitched a net of profit over the city, and she, who had once been unstitched by the same people, now held threads in her hands. The photograph under her door thrummed in the back of her mind. He watches who you trust. Tonight, she would choose who to trust, and in the morning the city would begin to notice the seams. The rain returned the next night like memory refusing to be buried. It slicked across the streets in silver sheets, erasing footprints and rewriting reflections. Lina watched from the window of her apartment, the city breathing in storms and exhaling secrets. Somewhere out there, men in suits were rewriting history again, her history, and she was done letting them. Her laptop glowed dim on the kitchen counter. The files Rosa had given her were still decrypting, slow and cautious, like a heart learning to beat after too many years of silence. Marcus had told her to wait, to bring the data to him before opening anything, but patience was a currency she no longer possessed. At 11:47 p.m., the final folder unlocked. Inside were logs, thousands of them, timestamps, transaction IDs, account numbers. It was an entire architecture of deceit, and at the top of every authorization chain was the same signature, D. Cross. She traced the digital web with a trembling cursor. The scheme was more than financial fraud. It was systemic manipulation, payments to judges, bribes masked as consulting fees, private donations looping into election funds. This wasn't a company, it was a kingdom built on invisibility. She printed a few pages, her fingers smudging the ink. The sound of the printer was too loud, too alive. Every sheet felt like evidence and confession at once. A knock shattered the silence. 3 short taps. Lina froze. No one knocked at this hour. She turned off the lights and waited. Another knock, firmer this time. Then a voice she almost recognized. "Marcus, it's me. Open up." The relief that flooded her veins lasted exactly 1 second, until she looked through the peephole. The hallway light flickered. Marcus stood there, soaked from the rain, but his eyes weren't calm. They were searching the shadows behind her door, not her. "Marcus," she whispered through the crack, "let me in." "Now," she hesitated. "You said tomorrow morning." "Plans changed," he said. "We're compromised." "Damien knows about Rosa." Her stomach dropped. She unlatched the door but left the chain in place. "How?" Someone tipped him off. "He sent men to her building. She called me before they cut the power." Lina's mind raced. "Is she?" "I don't know," Marcus said. "But we have to move. Elias wants you safe." "Where?" "Vern Tower. He says it's the only place with enough cameras to keep us alive." It made no sense. Hiding inside a corporate fortress owned by the same man trying to atone for his sins? But then, nothing made sense anymore. She grabbed the documents and shoved them into a waterproof bag. When she looked up, Marcus was scanning her apartment with quick, jerky movements, checking windows, outlets, corners. "Who else knows you have this data?" he asked. "No one," she said. He exhaled too sharply. "Good. Keep it that way." They left through the back stairwell, descending 5 flights in silence. The city smelled of ozone and diesel. On the street, Marcus gestured toward a waiting car, a black sedan idling with its headlights off. Something inside her hesitated. "Marcus," she said slowly, "where's your phone?" He didn't answer right away. Then, I tossed it. Burned. The word hung heavy in the rain. Burned. The same word Damien had used in his internal memos. Burn the files, burn the names. She took 1 step back. "Tell me Rosa's last words," he blinked. "What?" "You said she called you before the power went out." "What did she say?" Marcus's expression didn't change, but his silence spoke louder than thunder. "You don't know," Lina whispered. His jaw clenched. "Lina, get in the car!" "No," he sighed, rain dripping from his hair. "Don't make this harder." For a heartbeat, the world went still, just the sound of rain and her pulse pounding in her ears. Then she saw it, the faint bulge of a holster under his coat. Marcus reached out, slow and deliberate. "You have something that doesn't belong to you." Her body moved before her mind did. She threw the waterproof bag toward the fire escape window and kicked the door shut. Glass exploded as she dove for the stairwell, boots sliding on wet metal. Behind her, a gunshot cracked the air. She didn't stop. Down 2 flights, through a maintenance corridor, out into an alley smelling of trash and adrenaline. Sirens wailed somewhere distant. Too far, too late. She ducked into a side street and ran until her lungs burned. The bag thumped against her hip. Somewhere above, lightning stitched the skyline open, and she saw her reflection in a puddle, wild-eyed, alive, defiant. When she finally slowed, she found herself outside an old church, the kind that survived only because no developer could agree on who owned the land beneath it. The doors were open, candles flickering. Inside, a priest looked up but said nothing. Some places required silence more than prayer. She sat on the back pew, the bag still clutched in her arms. The gunshot echoed in her mind, merging with Marcus's voice. "We're compromised. If he had turned, who else would? Elias, the board? How deep did Damien's reach go?" She pulled out one of the documents. The ink had smudged from the rain, but the numbers were still legible. On the bottom corner, a handwritten note. "All routes lead to VC. Stop before the glass breaks." She didn't recognize the handwriting, but the initials were clear. VC Vern Corporation, Elias's empire. Her breath came slow, deliberate. Somewhere between the betrayal and the storm, the line between ally and enemy had blurred beyond recognition. Maybe Marcus wasn't lying. Maybe Elias was. She looked at the cross above the altar, lightning briefly turning it into a blade, and whispered, "If this is justice, it has a cruel sense of humor." The rain outside softened. Somewhere in the city, someone else was watching her every move. The war had already started. She was just catching up to the opening act. Tomorrow she would find Elias. Not to hide, to ask him what glass was about to break. Morning didn't arrive gently. It crashed into the city like a verdict. Lina hadn't slept, her mind looping through every word Marcus had said, every word he hadn't. The church pews had turned cold beneath her, so she left before dawn, moving like a shadow among shadows. By the time the sky bled gray, she was standing across from Verna Tower, 60 floors of polished deceit rising into the mist. From a distance it looked calm, logical, sterile, like corruption had dressed itself in glass and called it progress. She entered through the public lobby, the kind designed to make everyone feel small. Cameras followed her reflection in the marble floor. No guards stopped her, no questions asked. That was the trick with power. It didn't have to hide. It simply existed, assuming everyone else would look away. The elevator whispered upward. 60 seconds of silence. 60 seconds to decide whether she still believed Elias could be trusted. When the doors opened, Elias was already waiting. No security, no assistance. Just him, standing behind a desk too wide to cross in a single breath. "You look like someone who's seen a ghost," he said. "I saw something worse," Lina replied. "A man I trusted holding a gun." Elias's expression didn't change. He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit. Tell me everything." She didn't. She stayed standing. "You told Marcus to protect me." "I did. He nearly killed me." Elias blinked once, slow, deliberate. "Marcus wouldn't—" "He's gone," Lina said. "Gone or working for Damien. I can't tell anymore." But he knew about Rosa. He knew before the story broke. Elias exhaled. "Then the leak wasn't from my end." Lina studied him. He looked tired but not surprised. "There's something you're not telling me." "There's everything I'm not telling you," he said quietly, "because I still don't know which side you're on." That stung. "I'm on the side that wants to stop Damien Cross from turning the city into his personal machine." Elias's lips twitched into something between respect and regret. "Then we share a goal. But understand this. Vern Group isn't clean. Project Mercury runs through my floors too. You expose him, you expose me. Then why help me?" "Because I built a system I no longer control," he said. "And if it's going to burn, I want to choose the match." He opened a drawer and slid a black keycard across the desk. "Sub-level 2. You'll find what Rosa died for." Lina's fingers hovered above the card. "You're giving me access?" "I'm giving you the truth," Elias said. "Whatever you do with it is your burden, not mine." She pocketed the keycard. "And Marcus?" "If he's alive, he's working for Damien. If he's dead, he's collateral. Either way, don't look for him." Was he ever really on my side? Elias's gaze met hers. "The question isn't whose side he was on, Lina. It's whose game he was playing." She turned toward the elevator. "Then maybe it's time I learned the rules." The descent to the sub-level felt like falling into the city's subconscious. The air grew colder, the light dimmer. A fingerprint scanner accepted Elias's card with a soft click. Beyond the metal doors stretched a corridor lined with servers and silence. She followed the sound of machinery to a glass room at the center. Inside, a woman sat at a terminal, typing. Younger than Lina, maybe mid-20s. Headphones on, oblivious. When Lina tapped on the glass, the woman flinched and turned. Her ID badge read, "C. Voss. Are you supposed to be here?" the woman asked. "Apparently not," Lina said. "But I'm here anyway." C. Voss hesitated, then shut down the terminal. "You must be the reason everyone's pretending not to panic." "I'm looking for Project Mercury files. You and every ghost in this building." She eyed the key card. "Elias sent you?" "Yes." C. Voss studied her a moment longer, then smiled faintly. He finally got tired of pretending this place was a charity. She opened a hidden drawer beneath the console, revealing a sealed drive. Everything you want is here. Everything Damien doesn't want found. Lina took it carefully. How long do I have before someone notices? Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe less, C. Voss said. Security cycles every quarter hour, but Damien's private system doesn't obey the clock. Then I'd better run. Wait, Voss said. There's more. The data connects to offshore accounts, yes. But there's also a list of names. Board members, judges, journalists, people paid to keep the narrative neat. Whose list? Yours, Voss said. Damien had you surveilled long before the scandal. You were supposed to take the fall, but someone deleted the contingency files. He's been trying to rebuild them ever since. Lina felt the ground tilt beneath her. He didn't just destroy my career. He designed my downfall. And he'll do it again if you're not careful. The lights flickered. The hum of the servers changed pitch. Voss glanced at the ceiling. That's not a cycle. Someone's coming. Lina pocketed the drive. How do I get out? Back tunnel behind the archive, Voss said. Left, then straight until the red door. It exits on 6th Avenue. Come with me. Voss shook her head. If I vanish, he'll know exactly who helped you. I can buy you 2 minutes. 2 minutes isn't long. Then make them count. Lina hesitated, then squeezed Voss's hand. Thank you. Don't thank me, Voss said. Just finish what you started. As Lina disappeared down the corridor, alarms began to wail, a sound like justice waking up. She ran until the red door appeared ahead, pushed it open, and spilled into the night. The city roared back to life around her, neon reflecting off wet asphalt. She looked down at the drive, still warm in her hand, and whispered, Now the countdown begins. Behind her, Verna Tower burned its lights brighter, as if the glass itself was watching. The city was louder than ever, yet Lina moved through it like sound traveling underwater, muted, distorted, carrying only fragments of meaning. Every step echoed the same thought. She had the proof now. The drive in her pocket was a heartbeat of truth, pulsing against her thigh with every movement. But truth had a strange gravity. It pulled danger closer. By midnight, she was in an old newsroom once owned by a newspaper that had died of disinterest and debt. Elias's contact, a retired journalist named Hal, had agreed to meet her there. The place smelled like dust and ink, like stories buried alive. Hal was waiting at a wooden desk littered with yellowed photos and coffee cups. His face was carved with lines that looked like deadlines missed by decades. You're late, he said without looking up. I had to outrun a corporation, Lina replied. Traffic was murder. Hal smiled faintly, still not meeting her eyes. They said you were dramatic. They said worse, she said, but I'm still standing. Finally, he looked at her. You've got something. She nodded and slid the drive across the desk. Project Mercury, financials, blackmail, digital fingerprints. Enough to bring down half the boardrooms in Manhattan if it sees daylight. Hal picked it up, turning it over in his hands like a relic. And you trust me with it? I don't trust anyone, she said. But you're retired. You don't have anything left to lose. He laughed quietly. That's exactly what makes me dangerous. He plugged the drive into an ancient computer. The screen flickered to life, the whine of its fan filling the room like an old man clearing his throat. Lines of code scrolled upward, followed by transaction records, offshore balances, encrypted message chains. Hal whistled. This isn't corruption. This is architecture. That's what Elias said, Lina murmured. Elias Verna? Hal asked, suddenly alert. You're working with him? I thought I was. Then you're in deeper than you think. She frowned. What do you mean? Hal leaned back. Verna didn't inherit his empire. He built it by absorbing others, companies, charities, entire cities' worth of influence. Damien Cross might be the architect, but Elias is the engineer. You take down one, you destabilize both. Lina felt her chest tighten. He gave me this key card. He said it would lead to the truth. Of course he did. The best lies always hide behind half-truths. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. If Elias is part of it, why help me? Hal looked at her with tired sympathy. Because sometimes a system eats its own builders. Maybe he's realized he can't control the monster he helped create. On the screen, an email thread appeared, marked Private, Board Consolidation Strategy. The names made her blood run cold. Damian Cross, Elias Verne, Marcus Holt, Marcus. Her pulse faltered. He's alive! Hal scanned the text. Not just alive. He's the intermediary, the one who connects the shell companies to Verne's charitable front. Every transaction you uncovered, it runs through him. Lina stepped back. He tried to kill me. Maybe he didn't have a choice, Hal said. Or maybe he did. The computer beeped, interrupting them. A notification flashed. Incoming connection, unknown source. Hal frowned. That's not me. The cursor began to move on its own. Files opened, closed, duplicated, and vanished. They've found us, Lina whispered. Hal yanked the drive free, but the screen froze mid-command. Then, in the upper corner, a single message appeared, typed letter by letter. You should have stayed erased. The power cut. The room plunged into darkness. For a long second, there was only the sound of rain against broken windows. Then Hal's flashlight clicked on. Backup's in the basement, he said. Lina's heart hammered. They're tracing physical locations. We have to move, he nodded. Go. I'll slow them down. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice, he said. You're the story now. He handed her the drive. Take it to the one place still hungry for the truth, the courthouse archives. They still log evidence manually. If you can get it filed, it's public record. No one can erase it then. Hal, go! Footsteps echoed in the stairwell above them. Heavy, synchronized. Lina slipped out the back, the drive clutched in her hand. Rain lashed the street, and thunder drowned out the rest of the world. She didn't look back, but she heard the crash of doors and the dull pop of gunfire. By the time she reached the corner, the newsroom was burning. The fire painted the clouds in shades of accusation. She ducked into an alley and leaned against the wall, gasping. The drive was still warm, pulsing faintly, like a second heartbeat. Hal's words echoed. You're the story now. The thought chilled her more than the rain, because stories could be rewritten. She looked up at the courthouse spire in the distance, lightning slicing the sky above it. Justice stood somewhere inside, paper thin and flickering, waiting for someone foolish enough to bring it the truth. And she was exactly that kind of fool. She started walking. The courthouse stood like a relic from another century. Columns cracked, stone darkened by rain, windows reflecting a city that no longer believed in justice. It was 3 a.m., and the only light came from street lamps and ghosts. Lina's shoes squelched as she climbed the marble steps, the drive still clutched in her palm. Every instinct screamed that this was madness, walking into a public building after midnight, carrying enough evidence to bury billionaires and politicians alike. But there was no other way left. The courthouse archives were in the basement. Hal had been right. The oldest evidence was still logged by hand, sealed in boxes, filed under codes that predated the digital age. That made them invisible to hackers and to men like Damian Cross. She reached the door marked Records. The keypad was ancient, mechanical. She used a bobby pin from her hair, twisting until she heard the soft, metallic sigh of surrender. The lock clicked. Inside, the air was cold and smelled of dust and cardboard. Rows of metal shelves stretched into shadow. The kind of silence that remembered every lie ever sworn on a witness stand. She found an empty filing box, tore off its label and slipped the drive inside along with a printed statement, dates, transactions, signatures, and one line written in her own hand. For the record that refuses to die. She sealed the lid and slid it into a space between two case files dated 1989. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at the box, her small rebellion against a machine that had eaten everything she loved. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Not hers. She froze, listening. The sound came from the hall. Rubber soles on tile, deliberate pauses between each step. "Who's there?" she called softly. No answer. She backed away from the shelves, eyes searching the dim. A shadow moved across the doorframe. Then a voice, calm, familiar, cut through the dark. Lina, her breath caught. "Marcus?" He stepped into the light, raincoat dripping, expression unreadable. There was no weapon this time, no fury, just exhaustion. "I didn't shoot you," he said quietly. "You tried." "I missed on purpose." She almost laughed. "You expect me to thank you for bad aim?" "No," he said. "I expect you to listen. They have Elias. He's in custody, but not police custody. Damien's people took him." Her pulse spiked. "Why?" "Because you have what he wants." He glanced at the shelves. "And because Elias tried to stop him. Whatever you think of him, he wasn't your enemy." Lina studied his face, trying to read the truth. The last time she'd trusted him, she'd nearly died. But something in his voice, flat, frayed, sounded like a man who'd run out of lies. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Trying to make sure you stay alive long enough to finish this? You're working for Damien." "I was," Marcus said. "Not anymore. He doesn't keep allies, only liabilities. And I've just been promoted to one." Lina's grip tightened on the table behind her. "So why help me now?" "Because you're the only person who still thinks the truth matters," he said. "And I'd rather die beside that idea than live another day inside his system." He reached into his coat slowly and pulled out a small envelope. "Coordinates. Safe house on the East River. Someone waiting there, C. Voss. She got out before the lockdown." "She has the backups," Lina blinked. "She's alive?" "For now," Marcus said. "But not if Damien finds her first." Lightning flared through the windows. The whole room glowed blue for a second, painting Marcus's face in ghostlight. "You can still run," she said. "Disappear. I did that once," he said. Didn't work. A silence stretched between them, heavy as confession. Then, faintly, she heard another sound, distant engines outside. Marcus's head snapped up. "They're here. How I led them away from you, but they followed. Then you betrayed them," he finished. Again. He looked at her, eyes hollow but fierce. "Listen, when they come in, take the back corridor. It leads to the loading dock. There's a maintenance exit across the street. Go straight to the river. Don't stop. What about you?" "I'll buy you 2 minutes." 2 minutes, she whispered. "That's what Rosa said." Marcus smiled faintly. "Then maybe we'll make them count this time." The front doors slammed open upstairs. Boots, shouting, the echo of authority gone rotten. Marcus drew a small pistol from his coat and checked the chamber. "Go," Lina hesitated. "You don't owe me this." He looked at her one last time. "I owe myself something better than survival." Then he turned toward the hall as the first shadows descended the stairs. Lina grabbed her coat, ducked behind the shelving, and ran. Behind her, gunfire cracked through the silence, ricocheting off the marble like lightning in a stone storm. She didn't look back. The maintenance tunnel was narrow and wet, the air thick with dust. She could still hear Marcus's voice echoing faintly through the chaos, one last shout, then nothing. When she burst through the service door, the night air hit like a second birth. Across the street, the East River glimmered under stormlight. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, not for justice, but for whoever had dared to wake it. Lina pulled her hood up and ran toward the water, every step carrying her further from the life she'd lost and closer to the truth she couldn't unlearn. The box she'd left behind sat silent in the archives, sealed and waiting. Inside, the drive pulsed once, then stilled, its data now part of the record that refused to die. And somewhere in the dark above, a new storm began to gather. The East River smelled of iron and rain, a living artery under the city's skin. Lina crouched behind a stack of shipping crates at the water's edge, heart thundering louder than the storm. She didn't know if Marcus was dead or alive behind her. She only knew he had given her the same 2 minutes Rosa had given her. And she wasn't about to waste them. A small light blinked once from the far end of the pier. A signal, faint but deliberate. She slipped out from cover, boots splashing through puddles, and followed the glow. The safe house wasn't a house at all, but an abandoned ferry office built of brick and neglect. Its windows were boarded. Its door creaked like an accusation. Inside, the smell of salt and mold hit her like memory. "Lina?" a voice whispered. She turned to see C. Voss emerge from the shadows, wrapped in a blanket, hair damp from rain. Her face was pale but unbroken. "You're alive," Lina breathed. "Barely," Voss said. "I saw what they did to Rosa's building." "She never made it out." Lina's stomach knotted. Another name turned into an absence. She reached out and took Voss's trembling hands. "I'm sorry." Voss shook her head. "Don't be." She knew the risk. "We all do." In the corner of the room sat an old computer tower, humming softly. Voss gestured to it. "This is the backup Marcus told you about. Everything Damien has touched. Every ghost account, every bribe, every name." Lina knelt beside the machine. "You're sure it's all here?" "Yes," Voss said. "And something else. Audio files. Not just transactions, conversations. Damien talking with judges, with city officials, with Elias." Lina froze. "With Elias?" Voss nodded. "And Marcus. Months of recordings. The whole architecture of this thing. He never thought anyone would piece it together." Lina's hands hovered above the keyboard. "If we release this, the city explodes." Voss's eyes were steady. "Isn't that what you came back for?" Outside, thunder rolled across the water. The ferry horns moaned like ghosts. Lina loaded the first file. Damien's voice filled the room, smooth and confident. "She thinks she's untouchable because she's clean. She doesn't know clean is the easiest to stain." Another voice followed. "Elias, if you push too hard, you'll break the system." Damien laughed. The system was built to bend. "She's just leverage." The words hit Lina harder than a blow. Elias had known. He'd been part of the architecture all along. Her throat tightened. "I trusted him." Voss's face softened. "Maybe he trusted you too. Maybe he wanted you to find this. Or maybe he wanted me to bury it," Lina whispered. For a long moment, they just sat. The storm pressing against the walls, the city's heartbeat pulsing through the floor. Finally, Voss spoke. "We can't stay here. They'll trace Marcus, then trace you. We need a place to push this into daylight." "Hal said the courthouse would make it public record," Lina murmured. "But now they'll be watching every entrance." "Then we don't walk in," Voss said. "We stream it." Lina looked at her. "Stream?" "Live," Voss said. "Directly to every feed that will take it. Social platforms, dark web mirrors, whistleblower networks. Flood them. They can't kill 1,000 copies." Lina's pulse quickened. It was bold, reckless, the kind of move Damien wouldn't expect. "They'll try to cut it off," she said. "They'll be too late," Voss replied. "But we need time. Someone has to draw them away while the upload runs." Lina closed her eyes. She saw Marcus's face, his last look. She heard Rosa's voice. 2 minutes. Always 2 minutes. She opened her eyes again. "I'll do it." "No," Voss said. "You're the only one who can explain the files once they're out. You're the face people will believe. If you disappear now, they'll call it fake." "Then who?" "I will," Voss said quietly. "It's my turn." Lina shook her head. "I won't let another person die for this." Voss gave a small, sad smile. "You don't get to let or not let. We're already in it." She turned back to the terminal and began setting up the upload. Multiple nodes, mirrored addresses, timed releases. Her fingers flew across the keys like a pianist playing the last piece before the hall burned. Outside, headlights flared on the river road. Black SUVs slid to a stop. Doors opened. "Men stepped out. They're here," Voss said without looking up. 2 minutes. Lina's chest ached. "Where's the exit?" "Back window onto the pier. Get to the small boat tied behind the last piling. Engine's ready." Lina hesitated. "Come with me," Voss kept typing. "Go. When the upload hits 100%, the building will be a beacon." "They'll come for me, not you." Lina stepped back, torn between fury and gratitude. "I'll come back." Voss smiled without looking. "Make it matter. The headlights cut across the windows, throwing long shadows over the walls. Lina slipped out the back as the first door crashed open. She climbed onto the pier, rain slashing her face, boots slipping on wet wood. The boat waited like a promise in the dark. Behind her, gunfire erupted. She untied the rope with shaking hands, pushed off, and the engine roared to life. The boat lunged forward into the river's black mouth. As she looked back, the ferry office glowed with the pale light of monitors. For a heartbeat, she saw Voss silhouetted in the window, hands still moving over keys. Then the feed of headlights swallowed her. The boat cut through the water, carrying Lina and the drive toward a horizon she could no longer see. On her phone, a notification blinked. Upload 78%. 79%. She stared at it, rain streaming down her face. 2 minutes, always 2 minutes. The river swallowed the sound of the city until all that remained was water and wind. Lina steered the small boat east, away from the burning skyline, her fingers trembling on the throttle. Every raindrop felt like a countdown. Behind her, the ferry office glowed once more, a faint, ghostly pulse against the fog. Then suddenly, it went dark. She didn't know if the power had failed or if Voss had simply stopped typing. Her phone screen flickered again. Upload 92%. 93%. Lightning cracked open the sky. The reflection of the city shimmered across the waves like fractured glass. For a moment, she thought she could hear Voss's voice carried by the storm, the whisper of a woman who chose to stay behind so that truth could cross the river. Then the light vanished. The skyline went black. Every building, every street lamp, every sound, a city-wide blackout. Lina's chest seized. Damien wasn't just cutting power, he was cutting the message. She slammed the throttle, pushing the boat faster. The waves turned rough, clawing at the hull, but she didn't stop. Upload. 95%? 96%? The drive pulsed in her coat pocket, a heartbeat of resistance. She could see the faint outline of the Brooklyn docks ahead, safety or something pretending to be. Then through the roar of wind, another sound reached her. A helicopter. Its searchlight cut through the fog, sweeping across the river like a blade. She ducked instinctively, steering hard to port. The beam passed over the water, missing her by meters. "Come on," she whispered. "Just 2 more percent." The light swung back, locking onto the boat this time. The machine's roar deepened. A voice boomed through a loudspeaker, cold, metallic, and unmistakable. "Stop the vessel, Ms. Mercer." Damien Cross. Even across the storm, his voice carried that same arrogance. Steady, surgical, certain of his dominion. "You can't run from what you built," he called out. "Shut it down, and I'll let you live." She laughed bitterly, rain mixing with tears. "You've already taken everything. What's left to bargain with?" "Your name," he replied. "Your story. You still think you own it?" Lina pushed the throttle harder. "Not anymore." The chopper descended lower. Its downdraft flattened the river, spraying her with salt and fury. Her phone buzzed again. "Upload 98%. 99%. A bullet shattered the stern light. Wood splintered near her arm. Lina dropped to her knees, clutching the phone to her chest, whispering to no one, maybe to Rosa, maybe to Marcus, maybe to whatever part of her still believed in miracles. "Hold on," she murmured. "Hold on just 1 more second." 100%. The screen flashed once, then froze. Upload complete. Stream live, global mirror, X47 dozens of connection addresses lit up across the display. The truth was gone, everywhere and nowhere at once. She exhaled, shaking, a laugh breaking free through the tears. "You can't kill it now." Above her, the helicopter hesitated. "Lina!" Damien's voice roared. "What did you do?" She looked up at the blinding light. "I gave them your confession." Gunfire erupted, the world fractured into sound and storm, the boat jolted. She felt the impact rip through the deck, the cold sting of river water rushing in. For a heartbeat, She thought about turning back, about surrender, about life. Then, she remembered the box in the courthouse, the women who had died, the janitor who kept tapes in another story long ago. Justice didn't wait for permission. She stood, facing the searchlight, soaked and defiant. "You said I should have stayed erased," she shouted. "But you can't erase what's already been seen." Then she leapt from the boat into the black water. The cold punched her lungs. The current grabbed her, dragging her under. She kicked hard, surfacing just as the boat exploded behind her, an orange bloom against the night. She floated on her back, the sky a blur of fire and rain. The helicopter circled once, then turned away, retreating toward the mainland where 100,000 screens had just come alive with Damien's voice, his crimes, his laughter, his downfall. Lina drifted until the current pushed her toward the pier. Her fingers found the rough edge of a ladder. She climbed, shaking, soaked to the bone but still breathing. On the dock, her phone blinked weakly. One last notification. Global stream trending. 1. The Mercury files. She smiled through cracked lips. The truth was out. Behind her, the river carried the wreckage away. In the distance, sirens began to rise. Not hunting her, not this time, but moving toward the flames she'd left behind. The world wouldn't be the same when morning came. And for the first time in years, Lina didn't feel afraid of dawn. She whispered to the storm, voice hoarse but alive. 2 minutes were enough. The dock under Lina's hands was rough, splinters biting her palms as she hauled herself up from the river. Water streamed from her hair, her coat, her boots. She lay on the wet wood for a moment, chest heaving, staring up at the sky. Above her, the helicopter veered away, its searchlight extinguished, swallowed by the storm. She had done it. The stream had gone live. Damien's empire was bleeding across 1,000 screens. But victory, she knew, was never that simple. A low vibration pulsed from her pocket. She fumbled for the phone, fingers numb, and saw a string of notifications racing faster than she could read. City Hall in lockdown. Stock exchange suspended. Multiple arrests underway. But buried among the headlines was a single message, anonymous. Dock 47. 2 blocks north. Hurry. Her pulse spiked. It could be a trap. It could be Marcus. It could be the end. But she had nowhere else to go. She forced herself to stand. Every movement felt heavy, her muscles aching from cold and adrenaline. She pulled her hood low and started walking along the pier, weaving between stacks of shipping containers that rose like silent tombstones. Dock 47 was darker than the others, half its floodlights blown out. A single lamp flickered over the edge of the water. Beneath it, a figure stood waiting. "Lina," the voice called softly. She stopped. "Marcus?" He stepped into the weak circle of light. His clothes were soaked, his face drawn, but he was alive. In his hand was no gun this time, only a battered briefcase. "I thought you were dead," she said. "I almost was," he replied. "Your 2 minutes worked." "You saw the stream?" "I helped seed the mirrors," Marcus said quietly. "Voss set it up. I just had to hit send." Lina blinked. "She's alive?" A flicker of pain crossed his face. "She stayed to finish the upload. They're calling it a raid gone wrong." Lina's throat tightened. "She bought us the truth." "She bought you the truth," Marcus corrected, "and now you have to decide what to do with it." He set the briefcase on a crate between them and opened it. Inside were documents, real paper, stamped, signed, sealed. Names, dates, bank codes, offshore accounts. The architecture of an empire disassembled in neat rows. "Everything Damien built," Marcus said, "and everyone he paid to keep it hidden. Judges, senators, CEOs, even the police chief. You're holding a map of the rot." Lina stared at the papers. "How did you—" "I was his cleaner," Marcus said simply. "Now I'm yours." The words hit her like a blow. "I don't want a cleaner. I want this over. He met her gaze. It's not over. The stream took out Damien, but these names, they'll scramble. They'll erase evidence, destroy records, burn everything you can't show the world yet. You have a window, days at best, to act before the machine heals itself. Lina's fingers brushed the edges of the files. They felt heavier than any weapon. "Why are you giving this to me?" she asked. "Because you're the only one who still thinks this city can be saved," Marcus said. "I don't. Not anymore. But maybe you can prove me wrong." A gust of wind rattled the containers. Far off, sirens rose and fell like waves. Lina closed the briefcase. "Where do we start?" "Somewhere safe," Marcus said. "There's a place in the old tunnel under Astoria. No cameras, no signals. We'll sort the files there." She shook her head. "No more hiding. The city's awake now. If we crawl back into the dark, we're no better than them." Marcus studied her, then gave a small, humorless smile. "You sound like Rosa." "She was right," Lina said. 2 minutes aren't enough anymore. We need daylight." She turned toward the street. "Come with me." He hesitated. "Where?" "City Hall," she said. "If they've locked it down, it means they're scared. We walk through the front door with this briefcase. We force them to look at it before they bury it." Marcus's brows knit. "You'll be arrested the moment you cross the threshold." "Then let them arrest me," Lina said. "Every camera will be on that building. They can't erase what's already live." For a moment, neither of them moved. Rain dripped from the edge of the lamp, each drop a small, deliberate beat. Then Marcus closed the briefcase, lifted it, and fell into step beside her. "You're insane," he said. "Probably," she replied. "But you're still here." He gave a short, quiet laugh. "For now." They walked up the pier together, the storm easing into a fine mist. The city loomed ahead, its skyline still dark, but its windows flickering with the glow of 1,000 screens. Somewhere inside those towers, men and women were already calculating how to survive the fall of Damien Cross, how to build a new throne from the wreckage. But for the first time, Lina felt like the ground beneath them might actually shift. Not just for her, but for everyone. She glanced at Marcus. "You think they'll try to stop us?" "Of course," he said. "That's what power does." "Then we don't stop either," she said. They turned onto a narrow street that led toward the heart of the city. The storm clouds parted slightly, revealing a strip of bruised dawn at the horizon. For 2 years, Lina had lived in shadow, defined by what had been taken from her. Now, for the first time, she was walking into the center of it, carrying the kind of evidence that could shatter an empire. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. Another anonymous message. He's not the only one watching. She didn't show Marcus. Not yet. The city ahead was no longer just a battlefield. It was a labyrinth of eyes, and somewhere inside it, a new predator was already moving. But Lina kept walking. This time, she wasn't running. The first light of morning found the city wrapped in static. Helicopters circling, sirens weaving through streets that hadn't slept. On every billboard, Damien Cross's face flickered and froze. His voice stuttered, his arrogance caught mid-sentence. Then the feed cut to black. Somewhere, power was shifting. Lina and Marcus moved through the crowd outside City Hall. People were gathered in clusters, phones raised, eyes bright with disbelief. News vans idled at the curb. The word whistleblower was on everyone's tongue, but no one knew who yet. The air smelled like rain and revolution. "Once we go in," Marcus said, "they'll close the doors behind us. You ready for that?" Lina adjusted the strap of her satchel where the briefcase now rested, disguised beneath old papers. "We don't need to get out. We just need to be heard." He gave her a look, part admiration, part worry. That's what Rosa said before she walked into the courthouse. "She didn't have 1,000 cameras waiting," Lina replied. At the top of the marble steps, a row of uniformed officers stood in formation. The great doors behind them were locked. The crowd murmured, restless. Lina stepped forward. "My name is Lina Mercer," she said, her voice carrying farther than she expected. I have evidence of systematic fraud and conspiracy connected to Damian Cross and his network. I demand entry as a citizen of this city. The officer in front didn't move. His face was impassive behind his visor. Then his radio crackled. A distorted voice murmured something Lina couldn't catch. The officer hesitated, then nodded once. "Let them through!" A hush rippled through the crowd. Marcus blinked. That was too easy. Lina's stomach tightened. "Maybe they want us inside." The officer stepped aside. The doors opened with a groan that echoed like a warning. Inside, City Hall was dim, only emergency lights glowing in the hallways. The silence felt staged, like an audience waiting for the first line of a play. They passed portraits of old mayors and founders, faces that looked suddenly less noble under the flickering light. Every footstep sounded amplified. When they reached the rotunda, a tall man in a gray suit was waiting. His posture was perfect. His smile measured. "Ms. Mercer," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Deputy Director Holloway. We've been expecting you." The phrase hit like ice. "Expecting you?" Lina didn't take his hand. "Where's the mayor?" "Unavailable," Holloway said smoothly. "Given the chaos, I've been asked to handle your material." He glanced at Marcus. "And your companion?" "Advisor," Marcus said. "And witness?" "Of course," Holloway said. "Please, this way." He led them through a side corridor into a chamber lined with monitors, not courtroom screens, but surveillance feeds, streets, offices, newsrooms, all flickering with images of the broadcast Lina had unleashed. "This is where we manage the response," Holloway said. "As you can imagine, the situation is volatile. You've exposed something large, Ms. Mercer, but large things can fall the wrong way if we don't control the narrative." Lina's grip on the briefcase tightened. "You want to control it?" "I want to make sure it doesn't burn the city down," he said. "Truth is fragile. You throw it at people all at once, they panic. The markets collapse. The innocent suffer." Marcus's voice was low, dangerous. "So your plan is what? Rewrite it?" Holloway's smile didn't falter. "To curate it. The world doesn't need every detail, just enough to reassure them justice was served." Lina stared at him. "You sound just like Damian." Holloway's eyes softened with something like pity. Damian Cross was reckless. "I'm efficient." He stepped closer. "Give me the files, Ms. Mercer. Let us process them through official channels." "You'll get protection. Recognition even. But if you try to play this through the press, you'll drown in lawyers before the week is out." Lina could hear Rosa's voice in her head. "The system doesn't change you. It digests you." She met Holloway's gaze. "You're not here to protect the city. You're here to preserve it exactly as it is." Holloway sighed. "Idealism is charming, but survival is policy." Marcus moved slightly in front of her. "You'll have to take it from her." For a moment, the air in the room thickened, the kind of silence that knows violence is next. Then Holloway smiled again. "Don't be dramatic, Mr. Vance. We're all on the same side." "Which side is that?" Lina asked. "The winning one." He turned toward the monitors. On one of them, a new broadcast had begun, not the raw stream Lina had released, but an edited version, trimmed, softened, labeled Ongoing Investigation, Crossgate. "They're already rewriting it," Marcus muttered. Lina felt heat surge through her. "You think you can clean it up that easily?" "We already have," Holloway said. "In 12 hours, the narrative will shift. Cross will be a lone wolf. You'll be a brave whistleblower who found closure. Everyone gets their ending and nothing changes." She took a step forward. "You're wrong. This isn't about closure." Holloway's eyes narrowed. "Then what is it about?" Lina's voice was steady. "Contagion." He frowned. "You can't contain an idea once it's seen," she said. "You can cut feeds, scrub files, even bury bodies. But somewhere out there, one person recorded, mirrored, saved it. It's already replicating. The truth doesn't need permission anymore." For the first time, Holloway's composure cracked. "You didn't just stream it?" She smiled faintly. "I coded it to evolve." Marcus looked at her in surprise, realization dawning. Holloway's phone buzzed. He checked the screen, his face drained of color, all across the monitors. The same phrase appeared in cascading text. "We see you." Every feed, every channel, every network. The system was eating itself alive. Holloway turned back to her. "What did you do?" Lina's voice was calm. "I made sure it couldn't be rewritten." The lights flickered. Somewhere deep in the building, alarms began to wail. Holloway backed away, eyes darting between the screens. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." "Maybe not," she said. "But neither do you." The sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor. Security, or something worse. Marcus grabbed her hand. "We need to move." Lina looked once more at the monitors. The city reflected in infinite fragments of its own corruption, and then turned away. As they ran through the empty hall, the alarms rising behind them, Lina couldn't help but wonder, had she freed the truth? Or just released another monster into the world? The alarms shrieked through City Hall, echoing off marble and glass. Lina and Marcus ran down the corridor, the emergency lights casting the walls in frantic red. Every turn seemed to lead to another locked door, another camera blinking awake. "Left!" Marcus shouted. "Basement level!" They burst through a service stairwell, their footsteps pounding down metal steps. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The hum of machines, the steady pulse of the city's underground veins. At the landing, Marcus paused, catching his breath. "You sure you didn't just start a digital war?" Lina wiped rain and sweat from her face. "No, I just stopped pretending there wasn't one." They pushed through a maintenance door and found themselves in a narrow tunnel lined with cables. At the far end, faint daylight filtered through a grate. Marcus's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, frowning. "Signal's back. That shouldn't be possible in this part of the building." Lina glanced over his shoulder. The message on the screen made her stomach twist. "Nice work, Lina, but this story isn't yours anymore. No sender." "No number," Marcus cursed. "They're already in." A distant rumble shook the tunnel. Somewhere above them, something exploded. The sound of systems crashing, perhaps literal ones. Lina pushed forward. "We have to get to the street before they lock the grid." They climbed toward the grate. Marcus braced himself against the wall, pried it loose, and the two of them crawled out into an alley that smelled of wet concrete and electricity. The storm had faded, leaving the air sharp and metallic. The city above them was chaos. Drones hovered, broadcasting evacuation warnings. Screens on skyscrapers flickered between government statements and fragments of the viral message still spreading. "We see you." Lina stared at one of the screens. Her own face flashed there, captured from the stream, tired, drenched, defiant. Beneath it, a caption scrolled, "Anonymous whistleblower behind Crossgate exposed, Lina Mercer." Her pulse spiked. "They outed me," Marcus nodded grimly. "Control the narrative, remember? They want to make you the symbol, so they can destroy the symbol later. We need to disappear." "You can't disappear," Marcus said. "You just turned yourself into the story." For a moment, Lina said nothing. The city buzzed with a strange collective electricity, fear, awe, confusion. People weren't running from her. They were recording her, faces lit by their phones. "They're not afraid," she whispered. "They're awake." Marcus followed her gaze. Across the square, a group of protesters had gathered under the courthouse steps, holding up signs scrawled in hurried ink. "No more ghosts." "We see you." He smiled faintly. "Looks like contagion works both ways." Then his expression changed. Over Lina's shoulder he saw them, 3 black SUVs turning onto the street. "Company," he muttered. The crowd noticed too. The chant began to swell, hundreds of voices blending into one, echoing through the stone canyons of the city. "We see you! We see you!" The vehicle stopped. Doors opened. Men in suits spilled out, weapons visible. Marcus grabbed Lina's arm. "We need to move!" "No," she said. "Not this time. Lina, if we run now, it ends like it always does. Silence, disappearance. They'll bury everything again." He looked at her, realizing what she intended. "They'll kill you." "Then at least they'll do it in daylight." She stepped forward, pulling the briefcase from her bag and setting it on the steps of the courthouse. Cameras zoomed in. Drones shifted overhead. "This belongs to everyone," she shouted. Her voice cut through the noise. "You think you can rewrite the truth, but it's already out there. Every name, every deal, every hand that paid for silence, it's public now. We don't need permission to see anymore. The men with guns hesitated. One raised a radio, listening to orders that never came. Marcus stood beside her. Yes, daylight burns. A ripple moved through the crowd, applause, then chanting again. The men began to retreat, their mission dissolved by the weight of witnesses. Holloway's voice came suddenly from every nearby screen, desperate and shaking. Citizens are urged to disregard unauthorized broadcasts. The situation is under control. Lina looked up, rain beginning again, faint and cleansing. That's the thing about control, she murmured. Once you lose it, you never get it back. The crowd erupted. Phones everywhere streamed, recorded, repeated her words. The chant grew louder, rolling like thunder through the city. We see you. We see you, Marcus leaned close. You just set the world on fire. Good, she said. It needed light. Above them, the first rays of morning broke through the clouds, washing the city in pale gold. The signs of power flickered and died one by one. And in that fragile silence, Lina realized something simple and terrifying. The truth was no longer hers to protect. It belonged to everyone now, a living thing with its own hunger, its own heartbeat. She turned to Marcus. What happens now? He gave a quiet, rueful smile. Now? We see what survives daylight. The sun over Manhattan rose slow and heavy, as if the city itself wasn't sure it deserved light yet. The skyline still wore smoke like a memory. Helicopters circled high, distant now, like vultures too full to land. Lina stood on the courthouse steps, motionless, her clothes soaked from the night before. Around her, the crowd had thinned. Journalists shouting into cameras, officers murmuring into radios, citizens holding their breath between disbelief and awakening. On the giant screens above Times Square, the world was no longer clean. The phrase "we see you" pulsed against footage of corruption, bank transfers, recordings, faces that once smiled on magazine covers now blinking under interrogation lights. Damian Cross's empire was falling in real time. Marcus stepped beside her, his jacket torn, his expression unreadable. They're calling it the largest coordinated leak in the country's history. Half the Senate's under review. The Bureau just issued a warrant for Holloway. Lina's voice was low, hollow. And Voss? They found her system still running. She finished it, Lina. Every mirror, every backup. She didn't die for nothing. Lina looked down at her trembling hands. No one should have to die for truth. That's the thing, Marcus said. Truth never asks for volunteers. It just takes what it needs. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the city swelled and faded. Distant sirens, chants echoing from side streets, the hum of generators restarting. Then Lina noticed a man in a dark coat standing across the street, still as a monument. He wasn't filming. He wasn't chanting. He was watching her. Marcus followed her gaze. You know him? No, she said. But something in the man's stillness chilled her. The way his hands stayed hidden in his coat pockets. The way the sunlight seemed to avoid his face. Then he turned and disappeared into the crowd. Marcus frowned. We should go underground for a while. You've put a target on your back that no movement can erase. Lina shook her head. If I hide, they win again. Someone has to stand in the open, to remind them the light's still here. Light draws predators too, Marcus said softly. I know, she replied. But darkness is where they multiply. She started walking down the steps. Reporters surged forward. Questions flew like bullets. Lina, did you plan the virus? Are you affiliated with the leak known as Mercury? Do you realize you've destabilized the global markets? Lina paused halfway down. The cameras turned to her like 100 unblinking eyes. I didn't destabilize anything, she said clearly. I just showed you what was already broken. The words rippled outward, catching microphones, feeds, headlines. Marcus exhaled slowly. You know they'll spin that in every direction possible. They can spin it, Lina said. But they can't unhear it. A group of protesters began marching through the square, holding signs that read, No more erasure, and the truth is public domain. Among them, a teenage girl carried a tablet streaming Lina's face live. tears streaking down her cheeks. Lina caught her eye for a moment. The girl lifted her fist silently in salute. Marcus leaned in close. "You realize you just became the symbol they can't contain?" "I don't want to be a symbol," she said. Too late. They walked together through the dispersing crowd. The air smelled like ozone and new rain, the aftermath of something irreversible. Everywhere they turned, the city reflected pieces of what had happened. Posters peeling to reveal old slogans beneath. People whispering names once sacred now turned to warnings. At a street corner, a giant holographic screen replayed a moment from the leak, Holloway shouting in panic, his office burning with blue light, the words, "We see you," crawling over his desk like living code. Beneath it, a line of text appeared. Anonymous source confirms files continue to multiply. Global transmission ongoing. Marcus stopped walking. "You didn't just set it free, Lina. You built something self-aware." Lina turned to him. "Information can't think. Maybe not. But belief can. You've given the world a virus they want to spread." She stared at the reflection of her own face in the glass. It looked older, harder, almost unrecognizable. "Maybe that's what justice was always meant to be," she said. "Not a courtroom. A contagion." The sound of distant chanting drifted through the air again, thousands of voices repeating the same phrase, rhythmic and rising like a heartbeat. "We see you. We see you. We see you." Lina closed her eyes. For the first time, the words didn't sound like accusation. They sounded like promise. Marcus touched her arm. "You think it'll last?" "Nothing pure ever does," she said. "But maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe it just has to keep moving." A gust of wind lifted the papers at her feet, fragments of the old world, contracts, memos, laws, scattering them into the sky like ashes. Lina watched them go. "Rosa said the truth always finds water. I guess she was right." Marcus smiled faintly. "And you were the flood." As they disappeared into the awakening city, screens continued to flicker. Drones continued to hum, and across the world, servers blinked to life, carrying the virus of truth into every system that once claimed to control it. For the first time in years, the world wasn't silent. It was listening, and somewhere beneath the hum, in that fragile space between chaos and clarity, Lina Mercer finally breathed without fear. The days that followed blurred into something unreal, half chaos, half rebirth. News anchors stumbled through scripts rewritten by truth itself. Lawmakers vanished from offices overnight. Servers crashed under the weight of a world suddenly hungry to know. Lina watched from a cafe window in Lower Manhattan, her reflection merging with the headlines flashing outside. Crossgate inquiry widens, Mercer refuses asylum. We see you movement spreads to 42 cities. The noise should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like static, the sound of something too big to control. Marcus sat across from her, stirring coffee gone cold. It's everywhere now. France, Kenya, São Paulo, even the United Nations called an emergency session. Lina traced a finger through the condensation on her cup. And Holloway? They found him on a cargo flight. Tried to vanish under a different name. Didn't make it past customs. Her gaze didn't lift. So it ends? He hesitated. For some of them. Not for you. Outside, 2 protesters walked by carrying signs, one with her face, another with the words, "Truth has no master." They didn't notice her behind the glass. Or maybe they did, and chose to pretend they didn't. Lina turned to Marcus. "Do you ever wonder if we unleashed something we can't take back?" He leaned back, eyes tired. "All revolutions start that way. The first step feels clean. The second feels messy. The third..." He glanced toward the crowd. "The third starts building its own gods." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't want to be one." "Then stop being visible," he said. She shook her head. "No, visibility is the point. They can't erase what they can still see." A small bell over the cafe door jingled. A man entered, soaked from rain, wearing a black hoodie. He didn't order anything. He just slid a folded newspaper onto Lina's table and walked out again without a word. Marcus reached for it cautiously. The headline was in bold ink still wet, Mercer leak exposed as internal cover-up? Lina read the subtext. Anonymous sources within city security claim whistleblower Lina Mercer staged the Crossgate data as part of an ongoing coup. Her stomach sank. They're rewriting it again. Marcus crumpled the paper. They'll keep trying. Power never dies. It just changes its logo. Lina looked past him, to the street where protesters and skeptics mingled, believers shouting beside those calling her a fraud. Truth had become a mirror, reflecting whatever people needed it to. "This isn't what I meant to build," she whispered. "No one ever does," Marcus said. "You gave them fire. Some will build with it. Some will burn." She stood, pressing a hand to the window. Rain distorted her reflection, breaking her face into shards. "I need to speak again," she said quietly. Marcus blinked. "You mean go public?" "You can't. Every network's monitored. The second you appear live, they'll track your signal." "Then we don't go through them." He frowned. "You're thinking what I think you're thinking?" She nodded. "The code's still alive. The Mercury network. If it can carry files, it can carry voice." Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "One last broadcast." They left the cafe and moved through the alleys toward the old subway terminal beneath the exchange. The power grid still flickered from the virus. The air smelled of rust and revolution. Marcus knelt beside an old server bank and began reconnecting wires. "This thing's a fossil, but it'll talk to the network if we coax it right." Lina stood before a dusty camera lens, breath fogging in the cold. "If they trace it, they will," Marcus said. "So make it count." When the light above the lens flickered green, she straightened her shoulders. "This is Lina Mercer," she began. Her voice echoed faintly in the empty tunnel. "And before they bury me under another lie, I want you to hear me first." The feed carried her image across 1,000 stolen channels. Screens in airports, subways, even corporate lobbies blinked to life. You've seen the files. You've seen the faces. But truth isn't just exposure. It's accountability. If you watched the stream and felt anger, don't stop there. Demand better. Demand to be seen too. She leaned closer. Because the real story isn't Damian Cross. It's every system that let him exist. Every silence that paid his salary. Every bystander who looked away. Her eyes glistened. "The next chapter isn't mine. It's yours. Keep watching. Keep recording. Keep saying the words that built this movement." She hesitated, then whispered the phrase that had haunted every screen for days. "We see you." And then, softly, "Now see each other." Marcus cut the signal. The servers powered down, plunging them back into silence. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Marcus exhaled. "That'll buy us maybe 6 hours before they find this place." Lina smiled faintly. 6 hours is a lifetime. Outside, the city pulsed again, not just with noise, but with awareness. Screens flickered to her face, then to messages written by strangers. "We see you, Lina. We see us." It was no longer a movement. It was an ecosystem, self-sustaining, unstoppable. As dawn crept across the tunnels, Marcus looked at her. "You realize you've just made yourself the most wanted woman on Earth?" Lina turned toward the light bleeding through the grates. "Then let them look. I'm done hiding." The camera she'd left running in the corner caught her last words before the power finally died. "Justice isn't a verdict. It's a signal. Keep it alive." The city above answered in kind. One voice, then 100, then thousands chanting in the streets. "We see you. We see you. We see you." And for the first time since the river, Lina Mercer smiled without fear. Months later, the city no longer hummed with fear. It thrummed with something new. Not peace, not chaos, but vigilance. The skyline wore scars like medals, a monument to what had been exposed. Billboards, once owned by corporations, now displayed messages from citizens. Murals covered concrete with faces of whistleblowers, journalists, and ordinary people who had pressed record when silence would have been easier. In one corner of the rebuilt market district, an old warehouse had been converted into the open archives, a public database center funded not by government grants, but by crowd donations. Anyone could walk in, plug in, and read. No passwords, no hierarchies. Just transparency. Lina Mercer's name was etched on the marble near the entrance, not as a saint or a hero, but as a founder. Beneath it, in small letters, the inscription read, "The truth belongs to those who dare to look." Inside, screens glowed with fragments of data, the kind that had once damned careers and toppled dynasties. Children walked between the rows, touching the glass, learning early what it meant to question. And in the far corner, behind the hum of servers, a man in a worn leather jacket adjusted a set of cables. Marcus Vance still worked there quietly, his face older, his voice softer. When volunteers asked if he'd known Lina personally, he only smiled and said, "She taught me to see." Every month, a message would still appear across the network, unsigned, untraceable, only 5 words long. "We're still watching the Watchers." Some said it was her. Others said it was just code, a phantom echo of the original Mercury virus that refused to die. But those who had been there on that stormed. Knight, who'd seen the helicopter, lights and the flood of screens. They believed Lina Mercer was still out there, not hiding, not hunted, just moving quietly between cities, helping others find their light, because that was what she'd always promised. That justice wasn't a courtroom but a current, a chain reaction that leapt from one brave soul to the next. One afternoon, a teenage girl entered the archives carrying a camera and a notebook. She paused at the plaque by the door, fingers brushing over the name, Lina Mercer. Her mother had once worked in the market district, the same one Lina had saved. The girl whispered, "We see you," and for a moment, the lights flickered as if answering back. Outside, the city was alive again. Drones buzzed overhead, but their lenses pointed outward, now serving as eyes for the people, not on them. The line between surveillance and safeguard had blurred, and maybe that was the point. In a small cafe nearby, the old TV above the counter played a documentary. The woman who made the world look, customers barely noticed, too busy arguing politics, art, and ethics, the very conversations her act had made possible. The camera panned to a rooftop garden at dusk. Someone unseen was standing there, a figure in a long coat, hair caught in the wind. She looked over the city with a calm, knowing smile before disappearing into shadow. No one confirmed who she was. No one needed to, because the movement no longer needed a name to believe in. It had become a reflex, a rhythm, a city where silence was the only crime left unpunished. And when night fell, across rooftops, phones, and quiet apartment windows, the same phrase glowed in soft white text, the heartbeat of a revolution that refused to fade. "We see you." Then the screens dimmed, one by one, leaving only the faint reflection of dawn on glass. Somewhere, a signal blinked once, twice, and then went still. The truth didn't end, it just went quiet, waiting for the next person brave enough to wake it.